Hey, Nathan Olson here with the Third Knock Podcast. I have Terry Samuels here with me, and I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself.
Hello, good morning. I'm Terry Samuels, owner of Soltera Digital Services. I also own Soltera University and then SEO Spring Training Digital Marketing Conference. I've been doing this for 15 years now. I'm 14, 15. Typically I came from the software development side. Actually started my company doing pharmacy portals. So a lot of small towns around the country don't have a Walgreens and a CVS. So for about 3 years, I built softwares to for doctors to talk to pharmacies like they do now. So and then I got into web design, and then I got into forced into SEO, as I like to tell people.
I felt that. I kind of got forced into SEO myself.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody that wakes up in the morning and really wants to start this with SEO, but it is what it is. So
I've seen some people that really do. I was kind of
mhm.
surprised myself. Like,
Especially the ones that are sales for SEO. I'm not a sales guy. I mean, of course I can sell, but I'm a technical guy, so that's what kind of gets me up in the morning. But these people that come out right out of the gate just selling SEO, and then because I do a lot of white label, and those people really impress me.
no, the
So,
salespeople, man, they excel at almost anything. That's the crazy thing. I agree with you. I'm not a real salesy person. I've actually learned a lot of my sales stuff from my mom. She was a realtor, and she basically was like, "You're just help them find the home they want, and help them get the best deal they can, and as long as you're trying to help them, the sale will make itself." And so,
exactly right.
so that's kind of been my philosophy, is just trying to help and do that from that approach. Um, so what was the pivot point, or what was the determining factor at some point where you went from maybe working a regular job to going, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore?
Um, we're kind of unique. Elizabeth and I, my wife and I, this is our third business together. We've been married 22 years. My exit out of corporate America was I worked for a Fortune 100 company. I was a technical director for a new software they were building and everything, and I actually got laid off. Excuse me, right in the middle of a business trip in Chicago. And when they laid me off, they cut off my corporate card, they cut off everything. And I'm literally having to pay for my hotel out of my own pocket, my rental car out of my own pocket. And yeah, it was and then it took me 9 months to get reimbursed. So, from a $1 billion company. So that was my FU. I'll never touch corporate America.
Burn me too many times.
I was so upset, because I was really good at what I did, and they knew that. The only reason I got laid off is this position they hired me for was a brand new position, and they paid me way too much money. So they hired me to do this technical director level, but they still had to hire a CEO and a COO, and so I threw off their whole salary numbers, and so it was their fault. I just took
Yeah.
advantage of it, but. Yeah, they laid me off and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. We just can't afford you." It's like,
You couldn't have waited until I was home, like,
exactly. Yeah. They knew I was off the trip because we had a big conference call the day before. So they knew I was in Chicago, and my plan, I was going to be there 4 days, and I was meeting with a bunch of mining companies in Chicago, and they knew what I was doing there. And I stuck with my fulfillment. I still met with these people, even though I wasn't technically working for them. I stayed in Chicago 3 more days and, met with these people, and and but it was one of those things that I thought I could also come back to because they took me from my regular job to this new position. I thought I could just go back to my regular job. And well, of course that wasn't available. So I was like, "Ah, I'm out
you
of here."
know, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So you got promoted to be demoted and like let go,
exactly.
basically.
Yeah. I got promoted to lose the position that I originally had. So, but yeah, it was an enlightening experience, like to say the least. So,
So, would you ever consider going back to not being an entrepreneur?
I have actually been offered. I was offered a couple months ago to take an executive position to help build a marketing team and do stuff like that because I do a lot of that with consulting. Some of it sounds intriguing, of course, steady paycheck, paid vacations, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's more of, is it a good fit than it is, I want a steady income or whatever. So I kind of like the entrepreneurship, especially, with all three of our businesses. And then, especially now with building stuff, I'm having fun again. So that was one of the things. And I've interviewed a couple times in the past couple of years. They've offered me a lot of money, but, again, it's got to be a good fit. So I have my way of doing things and teaching things, and to come into a C-level position and change a bunch of stuff, sounds good in an interview, but will it actually happen? So,
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the tune that you get through most entrepreneurs. We have a lot of overlap. We do a lot of the same things as you're saying,
mhm.
consulting and this and being tempted. I've been tempted a few times. And it's like, yeah, that would be awesome, but then you know how it really is going to go down. They want you to fix all these things until you want to fix all these things. And then
Yeah.
and then they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, we can't be doing that." And you're like, "Well, this is the solution." Like,
And that was funny, when I got laid off, I did go out and try to find another job. I interviewed for a large pet company. We don't need to name any names, but they wanted me to oversee a complete rebuild of their entire, well, intranet slash internet. Back then, it was all about intranet before, and then it was
yeah.
coming in internet. And so I interviewed for it, met the president, and, he said, I'll give you all, because their platforms were literally 7 different platforms. So they had C++, I mean, it was a mess. It was really a freaking mess, and they told me they'd give me a big budget and all this other stuff. And I just didn't have a good feeling about, like you said, it sounds good, but a month into this thing, how much are you guys going to fight me? Because I mean, it's a huge deal. I mean, this is, like I said, this is one of the largest pet companies in the world, and and they wanted to play in the online space, and they were not ready for it. And so, but I didn't take the job, obviously, just because I didn't think it would be a long term thing. I think I'd end up quitting after a couple months because they wouldn't do what I wanted to do, that type of thing. So,
Yeah, we still kind of experience that with clients sometimes, so I totally get
oh,
it.
for
Where it's
sure.
like, you're pulling teeth to get them to, to do better for their own self, and one of my mottos is you can't care more than them. So,
Well, and that's the whole thing. I do fire clients. I'm a big believer in firing clients. Just because, like you said, if they won't listen to you and do what you say, and they hired you for your experience and all the different things, I'm not cheap. So I'm pretty expensive. And if you hire me to fix your stuff, I'll fix your stuff. But if you're gonna micromanage me and fight me and all this stuff all the way through, then there's not much I can do for you. So, but I really like getting more involved in businesses, fixing their fulfillment, fixing their sales process, all the different things. And I'm not just a marketing guy or the SEO guy to any of my clients. I sit on a couple board of directors. Those are pretty funny. But yeah, it's just, it's one of those things that I've just evolved to, I want to help people. I want to help people that want to listen. I still like, which a lot of people don't, I still like the brand new businesses. Just because, if I can walk them along and get them to a point to maybe even talk about some profit sharing and stuff like that, that's where it really becomes a whole different ball game. But yeah, you have to want to help people in this business. And, my big thing about this business is all the people that get hurt by people that don't have that
yeah,
mentality.
you got this slick salesmen who have no white label or any way of fulfilling, and you see them in the groups all the time asking these really basic questions, and you're like, oh no, another one,
Mhm.
and not all of them are bad. There's lots that are out there. The person that hired them is understanding that they're not that experienced, and in
Mhm.
those scenarios, way different. If they're transparent, it's the ones who go in pretending that they know everything. They put this huge price tag on it, and you get in, you're the guy behind them. They didn't
Mhm.
even set titles or metas, or they didn't even do anything, and you're like, well, what were they paying for? Because
Yeah. And it's getting even worse, because I just this morning, I get a lot of organic leads. That's where most of my leads come from. And I got a lead this morning for a weight loss company, and the whole website's built with AI, 37 H1s on every single friggin' page. I mean, it's just a freaking mess. And I just emailed her and I said, I'm not going to work on this website. If you want Elizabeth to rebuild it, we're happy to talk to you about a new website. And I know that's going to upset her, but it is what it is. I mean, there is a real technical thing that you have to be able to do certain things to websites in order for them to, show up, be there, all the different things that we work on. And some of this AI stuff, we use AI for lead gens and stuff like that. We use Sonic. I don't know if you guys have heard of Sonic. It's Robbie Rizzi's program. I think it's phenomenal. It's awesome, but it's also built properly. It's built from an SEO. So, so it's not built from some vibe coder that just invented this new platform and that has no idea on, the technical stuff that needs to happen within a website for it to start even getting noticed and ranked, and indexed. That's the biggest thing. And I could tell she's having an index problem because, yes,
Huh.
or I got looked at it today and she has 41 pages indexed. And I'll bet you if I look at it in 2 days, she'll have 24 or 4 pages indexed. So,
You
you
got
know,
37 H1s. I mean, and,
exactly.
and if you have that, who knows what else you have? Like, that's
Oh,
just,
I mean, that's like the basic snapshot. I was like, holy shit. And then I can look and, I use SpyFu, which is one of my favorite tools, but, and I can tell they redid this website in January of this year because they were ranking for 600 keywords and now they're ranking
it
for
just
70.
tanked. Yep.
So it just tanked
Tapered
them.
right off. Exactly. No, the
And
entry
so,
level is so low now, and that's the problem. And AI has made it a lot easier for people to fake it. Uh,
mhm,
so that's the problem, realistically. And these people are learning that they can do that and get away with a lot of this because they can sound, in an email or whatever. And some business owners don't want to talk to people on the phone. They don't want to get on a Zoom.
mhm,
And those are the ones that are going to be affected the most from what I'm
yeah,
seeing, because you can write up an email sounding like you know what you're talking about,
for
but when you
sure.
get on a Zoom and you're trying to show somebody, or on a phone call even, it's pretty easy to spot most of these scammers because you ask a direct question and they're like, oh no. And that doesn't mean that everybody has the answers. It just means they should at
Mhm,
least be able to answer basic questions relatively quick and say, hey, this is a strategy, this is why, this is the problem, and this is how we solve it.
yeah.
uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
it is an interesting, there's a lot of shifting going on. I have heard of Sonic, I've never seen it or used it. But I've seen good things and heard good things. I have my own, I still am using WordPress. we
Yeah.
leverage
So do
we
we.
leverage AI, and we're using things to obviously speed things up.
Yeah.
um
And Sonic is one of the reasons we use Sonic is it's still WordPress based. So
yeah.
even though I hate Elementor, it builds a pretty decent Elementor site. So but again, we make sure and we offer that as a lower price package for a website. You can get a custom website for this, or you can get a AI built that's going to have the exact same stuff for this. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with as long as you're upfront and honest with people. That's the way to do it. Don't, I know this lady doesn't know this website's AI. She probably
Yeah.
penny for it. So I get to be the bearer of bad news, and I see that all the time. I had a guy or a lady 2 months ago. She paid $40,000 for a Shopify site,
Yeah,
and
I've seen some shady
holy
stuff of my own, and you're over here, you're just like, man, like, they're charging 20 grand for these sites that are just, they probably pumped them out in a couple hours, if that.
exactly. Yep.
And they didn't do any of the content. They let AI do all that. They let AI do all the images. They let AI do everything except collect
Hmm.
the bill. And then somebody like you or me or another marketer has to come in and be like, hey, this is not going to work. And now
Yep.
they got to get a new one. And they're like, wait a minute, I just paid 20 grand for that. Like, what are you talking about? It's like, they don't want to hear it. And I hate that because, like I
Yeah.
said, I'm in the, I have social anxiety, but I also am very keen on helping people. So it's like, I don't really want to tell you this, but
And and it's funny too because and I don't say funny because it's
right.
and I don't blame them. Obviously, they don't know any better. They don't even know what questions to ask. I mean, business owners are just trying to run whatever business they're doing. I it's like when we were flipping out, Elizabeth and I were, we were probably one of the top house flippers in Arizona during the heyday.
Oh, that's awesome.
And, and we're watching all this stuff, realtors talking to teachers and saying, oh, yeah, you can afford this $700,000 house
Oh
on your
man.
salary, and that's the kind of same thing that we're seeing in this industry is, people are just bamboozled. They're just, being talked into stuff. The 399 a month SEO companies that do more
Yeah.
freaking damage than anything else, and it costs twice as much and takes three times as long to fix a shitty SEO project than it does to do it right the first time. And
Yeah.
I've gotten websites because I do get a lot of websites after three or four SEOs have tried their hand in it. And, I got one the other day that we're having to just flip it over to the .net. The .com is just destroyed. It's literally freaking it upset Google so bad that we're just gonna flip in and do a .net and do a straight redirect. So um
Sometimes that's the way it is. I have had a couple recently that the homepage was used so dominantly for so many keywords that it's hard for us to create our location pages because they just want to sit there and compete and compete and compete. And you're like, it's almost like we better just go to a different domain and we'll do some wild card redirect or maybe a bunch
mhm,
of redirects and then do the homepage to a different page just to try to break that problem away. And even that gets finicky because you're talking the homepage here. Like now you go
exactly.
to a new homepage that has zero authority and you have other pages that do. And yeah, it could be a mess for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that the problem lies not just with business owners too. You got people who are trying to get into the industry that are honest, into the entrepreneurship and they're trying to start a business and you got the sharks, they come
Yeah.
out. You got the sharks coming out trying to sell you Wix and Squarespace and AI websites and like you said, they don't know better. Then they're selling you these courses and they're selling you all these stuff and you don't before you know it, they've become these shiny object syndrome. They've collected everything shiny but when it comes to building, they have no idea what they're doing, and they're getting fed mix max information
Mm,
to where it's like, this is what you do. No, 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 no. This is what you do. Oh wait, why are you doing it that way? Because there's automation now. Why are you wasting your time? And it's like I am so glad that I came in way before any of this because there was already so much noise anyway. No one could really agree on anything, and I don't think I
mm,
still see that same problem. Everyone's like, "Oh, schema doesn't matter," and then you got then it's like, "Well, wait a minute. What about when you're using like call tracking numbers and stuff? I think the schema matters because
mhm,
now I'm telling Google this is the real number." But this is why I have a call tracking number. That's just for tracking. You see, this is why I put that data here to make sure like, hey,
mhm.
this is not a mistake. This isn't, I'm lying to you. This is why. And, but you can't seem to get everyone to get on the same page, even with fundamentals. So when we start introducing AI and,
Well, and I think that's the big shift that's happened, right? So, I mean, one of the reasons I started the university 7 years ago, I think, was for small businesses, mainly to number one, learn it yourself so you can at least ask the proper questions and look at the proper numbers. And, because I get a lot of people that have been with SEOs for a year or 2 years, and I'm like, what the F? You should have left this guy a year or 2 years ago. He's just feeding you these fake PDFs. And that's my first red flag is if you're still reporting with a PDF, you're not reporting. But anyway, so the whole idea of helping these small businesses at least better understand to what to ask for, what to do numbers with. And then I started having agencies come through the university and, I've got four agencies that send all their new hires through the university, but at least it's a place that you can go and learn and ask questions. And it's not Facebook, it's not YouTube, and you get lost in these freaking holes. And, all of a sudden, Facebook groups are talking about one thing and somebody asks a question and you get 15 different opinions. And it's just like, I stopped even answering Facebook questions because 90% of them would turn into stupid arguments from people that, are just there to friggin' argue. And it's just, it gets very disheartening, especially when you do come at this industry with an open helping heart to help people. And then you see all this other crap happening. And, I've called SEOs out. I have no problem if I look at a website that somebody else did and, calling them out and saying, hey, at least let me show you what you did wrong so you don't do it to somebody else.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's like Wild West out there. Some of these people and then what bothers me the most about the arguments is that a lot of the times everyone's arguing over technicality. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even that it doesn't work. It's that, okay, that works, but it's not because of SEO. It's because of a correlation or, the behavior behind it. So it's not really a ranking factor. It's like, look, we're talking about something that works to improve rankings. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care about the technicality. If you do this and you get more clicks, you're going to get better rankings. So you want to argue about technicalities? This isn't a dictionary. This isn't a thesaurus. Or I'm not trying to prove that point. I'm simply saying if you have better titles and better metas, you're going to get more clicks and more
Mm-hmm.
behavior generally is rewarded. So
Yeah,
while it may not be the titles or the metas that cause the increase, it's the behavior. That's the technicality. And that's
exactly.
usually what people are arguing. And I'm like, who cares about the technicality? This new guy isn't going to want to go, oh, well, this is why. No, your titles and metas matter. That's all that matters.
And and then you're exactly right. It's just, and then they get into, how the title should be arranged and all. Oh, you have to stay at 60 characters and all this. It's like, come on, people, just freaking stop. I've got websites that I've got 1,000 words in the title in my test sites. It doesn't get any less freaking clicks than anybody else because it's showing what Google wants to show. And Google reads it. We all know that. Google
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
stop. They don't have a magic stopping point at 60. That was an old HTML, CSS guideline back in the day when Google didn't really have a good crawl system. But nowadays, yeah, you should put the most important stuff first and all those type of basic rules. But and there's a lot of ways to rank websites. I don't specifically do backlinking anymore. I haven't bought a backlink in 2 freaking years. I still do press releases. I still build backlinks to my good backlinks as a tier 2 and 3 type
Yeah, yeah.
system,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I stopped buying guest posts and freaking niche edits and all this crap out there just because the same freaking link that used to cost $30 now costs 150 and it takes 5 months to get indexed.
Yeah.
What the hell? I can make changes on page through internal linking, titles, metas, H1s. I can move needles quickly that way, you
Get in
know?
front of some audience with some press releases and different things, and then you start to get them naturally anyway. That's the whole goal. The reason why
Yeah.
we bought was to give you a jump start. But now it's
Mhm.
kind of like, like you said, and 150 is cheap. I've seen people wanting thousands. I mean, I have a guy that's
Oh,
buying,
yeah.
he's spending 10, 20 grand on backlinks a month. And,
Yeah.
and, there's no talking him out of it because this is what he's been doing for, before I was even in the picture. The
Yeah.
last agency was big, but that was like 10 years ago. So, back then it was a different game. To
Exactly. Yeah,
a
and
degree.
if you're in the local business, yeah, if you're an HVAC client in Phoenix, yeah, you're probably gonna need some backlinks, but to have it as a specific line item and in each month of your budget,
It may
I mean,
not be
it's
needed. It's yeah, there's
exactly.
different ways. The whole point is to get them naturally in the end anyway. And
Totally.
and if you do a good job and you care about your customers and those things and you keep publishing press releases and getting exposure, you're
Mhm.
bound to get backlinks. That's just the name of the
Yeah.
game. Like
And and you can also like I do, I'll find a good, tier 1 backlink with an anchor text that I like pointing to a page that I like, and I'll build links to that one. Whether I still use Neo and all these other, sublink systems just because I use most of that stuff for my content systems. But those things building tier 2 and tier 3 to already links that maybe you didn't even put, if
yeah,
you get a good backlink from 2 years ago, build links to that backlink, you
power them
know?
up. Yeah, power them up.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
and most people don't even pay attention to that. They just think they need to go out and buy new links, buy new links, buy new links. Like, no, look at your link profile and see what you can take advantage of,
And
you
then
know?
once again, even with the backlinks you're buying, the sharks come out. These
Mhm.
sharks come out of nowhere. You see them getting like, well, the DR is this. It's like that don't mean nothing. Like
Mhm.
you're looking at the site and you're like, this is bad. Like you shouldn't be paying. I'd pay to remove this. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
uh, so it's just kind of crazy that way. Uh, so anybody starting out, like let's say a small business owner,
Mhm.
because there's all this noise. Like I said, the noise out here is you shouldn't be buying a website. SEO doesn't matter anymore because the content will be so good from AI. These are things that even a buddy of mine who's getting into entrepreneurship, he's mentioned a lot of this stuff to me, and and he's believing it because he's being told this stuff from these big names, not that are basically they're selling these courses or training and mentorship, and they're saying, oh, you want to use like Go High Level or Kajabi or whatever, however you pronounce that, or you should be using this and this, not building your own website, and you should be doing these things that doesn't necessarily make sense to me, but they're explaining it. That's like SEO's dead. Now we got to focus completely on AI, and you don't need a marketer for that. Well, what do you think of that?
I first of all, I think it's comical because and people need to understand that all the ARs are giant scrapers. So they don't have any of their own data. And so the only way to get your data out there is through optimization. Call it SEO, call it whatever you want. I don't care what freaking, all the
Or
geo, all the bullshittos. It's all optimization,
yeah,
right? So you're optimizing now. You just have to optimize differently. You just have to optimize better. And the cool thing about AI for us is because we do really good SEO. So we came out of the gate already strong. And so the people that don't do SEO strongly, 37 H1s, 6,000 words on a page, your most important pieces of content are at the bottom, all this stuff, when you don't look at it from a scraping point of view, you shoot yourself in the foot, and I mean, I'm a huge high level guy. I'm actually an ambassador for high level, but I would never use their websites. I
yeah,
wouldn't, I
yeah,
mean, yeah, if I wanted to have a pay-per-click system, maybe a landing page and a couple pages for a funnel system, sure. But I'm not going to go out and build a 300 page freaking, website for a local business in Dallas with, I won't even do that with Sonic just because of the fact that, I just don't think it's there yet. I think it's getting pretty friggin' close, and Sonic is the closest out of all of them by far. We've built a bunch of websites. We've got 2 client sites that we're testing right now, but they knew going in that this was a test, and they're happy. Everything's good. They're starting to get leads, so everything's working fine. But it is a big it's a big shift, and but to sit there and say that you don't need a website, well, first of all, people try to do that in the GBP world. Oh, you
yeah,
don't need a website to rank in the maps. Well, good freaking luck.
yeah.
You
10
know,
years ago.
it's the same way with showing up in AI right now. And, we have conversations with our clients on our strategy calls every single month about what they need to be doing. Cause if, it needs to be, everything needs to happen at once. And so, we're a one-stop shop, but not all of our clients use all of our services. So they'll do their own social media. Well, we're dictating to them how they need to do their social media because of AI. We're
Yes.
dictating to them how they need to do their YouTube videos and their shorts and all the different things they need to be doing. If you're just a plumber, getting up in the morning and freaking going out and taking care of things and going home at night and drinking your whiskey and watching TV, you're done. You've got to be out there. You've got to be taking pictures. You've got to be taking videos. You got to be showing what makes you different than Bob over here next door. You got to be doing all the stuff that you should have been doing in the first place. That's the big thing. Where people are struggling with AI right now is they are so far behind because they weren't doing what they should have been doing in the first place. They still got 20 H1s and, 300 words on a page and all the stuff that we know is fundamentally you just don't do anymore. And it's not that anything's invented. It's just like, now it just includes everything, you know. We don't do much with Reddit, but during my university, I built an SOP for Reddit because we are going to probably have to do that sometime. It is
Hey.
a very powerful platform, and we understand that. So as an agency, to make that decision to start adding something like this, we're looking at that type of stuff. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is if you're out there, and I had one of my students about 2 months ago came to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to stop doing SEO. I'm just going to sell, you know, AI overview or geo or AI or whatever freaking initials he came up with." And I was like, "So you're just selling SEO?" And he goes, "No, I'm not." And I'm like, "You are."
You aren't going to get there without
Yeah.
SEO. You aren't
Yeah.
going to
I
get there
said, I
without
said, what,
optimizing.
what are you going to do so differently? And he goes, "Well, we're going to do more on social media." I said, "That's great. It's still all packaged, and the website will always be the hub. That's one thing that we don't see going away at all. Sure, they're going to show the 0 clicks and all that stuff, but they're still showing your website. They're still giving you credit. They're still giving you a citation. So, and I don't think that's ever going to change. Will the way we're presented with results? 100%. I definitely think so. But I don't think you're going to have yourself up there in results if you don't have something that you're building that they can scrape from. And
Yeah, well, we've heard the house is burning down so many times over the years. Like, let's just be honest. Like, we hear it all the time that
yeah.
SEO's dead, it's dead, it's dead, it's dead. Um, but the website thing kind of threw me off. I've also heard that a few years back where they were like, "Oh, apps are going to replace websites. Like, you're not going to use websites anymore. You got the app." Like,
Well, it was when AMP came out,
yeah,
accelerated mobile pages.
yeah,
We weren't building websites for a while. We were building these stupid, ugly little freaking AMP pages that didn't have any images or videos. They were just super freaking ugly. None of the clients liked them, and so that phase lasted about 6 months, and it
yeah.
was gone. You
Yeah,
know,
chasing Google's baby, and
yeah,
just like when you mentioned Reddit, that's Google's baby, and it's like they
exactly.
come up with these new things, and they almost always scrap them. Like very
Hmm.
few survive, but the ones that survive, they go hard and heavy on, and that's just the way it is. But it's interesting that the outside world, people who don't have any connection with marketing, how they are believing this stuff. I've
Well,
talked.
and so are small business owners.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I lost a client about 3 weeks ago, and here's one of the things: I don't fight when people want to
Right.
leave
Yeah, yeah,
or whatever. But this guy, it was a dental group. I specialize in medical, and so it was a dental group. But one of the dentists said, "Oh, hey, I can just do this with Claude. We don't need to pay this guy every single month."
yeah.
And that was 2 months ago. Well, their traffic's down 41% in 2 months. So, Claude and these AIs are really super good at a lot of stuff.
Just not
And
thinking.
one of my favorite things to do with Claude and ChatGPT and all those are the two main ones we use is especially around conversions. I'll take my landing pages in pay per click and especially ones that don't have the conversions where I want them, and I'll throw them into Claude and say, what can I do to improve this? That's the type of stuff that's really good. You can have it help you write your new titles and descriptions, but it also needs to understand
Direction.
who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to have like the one website I'm looking at right now doing an audit for. I got to have a call with her this afternoon. She doesn't even mention the city locations on any pages. Her Phoenix doesn't mention the word Phoenix in her title or description. And I'm like, you're missing the top three, URL, title, H1. Those are typically the top three.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and if you're on a local Phoenix page, you kind of need the word Phoenix in all three.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no, but yeah, you're basically going national or global without putting those into the
exactly.
information.
Yeah.
And that's fine if that's your intent and that's you're selling
Mhm.
a product or something global or national. That's great. But most of these people are specific to one city. And,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, you only service this city, but no one can find you in that city.
Exactly. Or they link their city pages together and cross
Oh,
this cross siloing crap. And it drives me nuts. And I've told people I had an interview yesterday with a podcast and he asked me what do I think the number one ranking factor is? And I said, it's still internal linking. It will always be internal linking.
more
You know?
pages, more
So,
problems when you start having people doing stuff like that. Because
yeah,
I have some that's like that. And it's like, oh, this page is ranking for the wrong page. You search the term and it's pulling up the wrong page because they did
exactly.
that. They did that cross silo crap you're talking about. And
Yep.
then I have to go through and try to reverse that by putting canonical tags and trying to
Hmm.
basically trick it back. And sometimes it works. Sometimes I have to change the permalink and then I have to do a redirect and I have to, but it's a mess, like you said, and especially when you got thousands of pages. I have a client that's basically a consulting kind of gig, and that's basically my job is going through every page, doing that stuff over and over again, catching the mistakes that the other team members are doing or previous people have done, not even
Hmm.
the new team, because a lot of that's getting them on board. Hey, we can't do this, we got to do that, and they're growing. But the problem is you have history going back 10 years and
Yep.
pages that were linked together, and you're like, what is this? Why did they
Yeah,
do
and
that?
it's I got so frustrated because I also take care of a lot of SaaS products for search, and so I had a link SaaS product that that I kept asking them to add certain things to it to make it better, and they kind of were ignoring me. And so I built my own link thing. And one of the big things that we see, especially in the on page linking, the siloing, is that a lot of people will delete the page and do a nice 301 redirect, but they didn't change the internal links.
Yep.
The
Yep.
internal links still, I mean, and they're not going to show up as a broken link. They're not technically broken because they're
Redirect.
301 redirecting. And we have seen literally freaking, we have fixed that on many sites and just seen that hockey stick. As
I
soon as you
just
just
got
take the time to go, and there might be hundreds of them,
I just got
you
done
know?
600 pages of that, and when it's
Yep.
got a crazy design, trying to get into all
Hmm.
those accordion drop downs, man, it's fun fixing all those. Like,
Yep.
usually you could use better search and replace, but on some sites, Elementor's little
Hmm.
change address tool doesn't want to work.
Yep.
I don't know why, but once you said, like you said, Elementor has some nice designs, but sometimes, man, I hate Elementor sometimes because of
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. And
So
it's, so that's the whole thing. So when I built my audit tool, one of the things I made it sure it said is I want to know how many internal anchor texts are 301 redirecting.
yeah, and it adds on load time too, which
Yeah.
hurts your conversions. So it's
100%.
definitely a good thing to get those cleaned up.
Definitely.
So anyone looking for SEO, let's say somebody that's never hired or paid for that service in their life, and like we talked about, this entry level is so low now that anyone can pretend.
Hmm.
What would you, how would you, what advice would you give them to ensure that they don't hire a scammer, or how they could up their odds of hiring or finding someone reputable? What would be your
But
kind of checklist?
and here's the opinion that people hate. Um, Call the people that are number one, two, and three at the top of search for your organic search. If you're looking for a marketing company in Phoenix, make that your search. The people that know their stuff are going to be in the top three or four or five even. You know, but if you interview somebody that doesn't rank their own damn website, that doesn't have their own processes and systems and stuff, then you're shooting in the dark. But and it's for me, it's my easiest close. And I've had people say, well, why should I hire you? I said, because I'm number one. Why
Yeah.
shouldn't you?
If
You
I could
know,
do it for myself, I can do
yeah,
it for you. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And I'll show them I'm number one. I've got, I think, about 13 or 14 lead gen sites for Soltera. And, I've got hundreds of keywords that I get organic leads from. And so, and I started that. That's the way I learned. I wasn't going to go out and say, hey, Bob, let me learn on your website. I ranked my own stuff. And probably before I even realized I was going to do SEO, I started ranking stuff. But I do think that that's one step. And then I think it's really asking the right question. I mean, that's one of the things when I talk to business owners, because I interview them because, like I said, I turn away a lot of people, just because there might not be a good fit. But the biggest thing is, I always ask him, why are you calling me today compared to a month ago? What's happened? You know, are you finally fed up? Did somebody make a mistake? Did somebody, what is the
Is
whole
it
situation?
slow? Is something
Yep.
not working?
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
And to just tell me that you're not getting leads anymore, that's we're not talking that. We're not talking leads. So if you think you can hire me to get you leads, I'm not your right person, because you might not ranking might be a second fiddle right now. We need to start with pay per click. Are you ready to start with pay per click?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
If you need leads now, we're not talking organic rankings. We're
You aren't going to
just making
survive
sure.
long enough to see the fruit grow on
Exactly.
that
Yep.
tree.
And that's my second question is what's your financial state? Are you 3 months from shutting your doors? Are you okay realizing that you need to redo this again? What is the situation? Because it could take a year. We could be partnering for a year and you need to have this much money to be able to handle this thing. And typically after the first couple questions, I about
You know if
50%
they're
of
a
the
good
people
fit
I
or
talk
not.
to, you're not a good fit. So I don't really care if you're going broke as long as you put the rest of your money that you have in the right spot. And that's not hiring me to do SEO. That's
Yeah.
hiring me to do, let's do some pay per click. Sure, I'll
Lead
optimize some
generation.
pages and stuff like that. Let's get you a good landing page funnel system built. Let's get you something that's going to start bringing in leads right away. and then we can talk and worry about the organic stuff.
Boost your revenue to pay for itself because you're not going to survive.
Exactly.
And personally, I don't like to take those on just because I don't know
Yeah,
how to
I
my own
typically don't
personality.
either.
My own personality of it is I just kind of am like it puts a lot of pressure on you because
Oh,
you're
for
talking
sure.
about somebody else's business. I care too much. I don't want to
Mhm.
see them fail. And so then I'm going above and beyond, which is taking more of my time. I'm not
Yep.
really being properly paid anyway because they don't really have the budget. And I learned that pretty quickly that that's a bad scenario to be in. Usually I'll give advice. I will even introduce you to people who can do gigs to where you're like,
Hmm.
hey, they'll build you a landing page. Hey, they'll run you an ad. Hey, they'll do this, because when you don't got a big budget, you probably can't pay for full service. Maybe we can get something rolling in and maybe in the future you'll be a great client, but that's too much
Yep.
for me to take on. I have too much in my own life. I don't need to be worrying about somebody else's business like that. Um,
And a lot of those type of businesses, those become really good equity plays.
no,
So,
and some of
you
those
know,
I do pick up. Yeah, I have a couple of those too. When you were talking about that,
like
a
I got a
water
I
damage
had a
company, and
I had a pool fence company come to me, and and obviously pool fencing is huge in Phoenix. And he's like, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And I started looking, doing the research, and talking to him. He's just an installer, so he doesn't do anything else. And so, we agreed I was going to get 20% of everything that came through the website and all this stuff. And things were going great for about 2 months, but then all of a sudden, here comes the wife.
yeah,
Everything changed. She blew up the whole freaking thing. Last I heard, not only did they get divorced, but I think his pool fence company had to shut down. I mean, we really had a good thing going, and he was working more than ever. And all of a sudden and that was my fault. I should have realized that or asked that question
who's in
is there
charge?
somebody,
Who's
do you have another
involved?
partner? Yeah, that type of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so, but lesson learned. But he was in that situation to where he was paying like $2,000 a month to this company. They weren't doing shit, and he was so busy from his referrals that he didn't realize he wasn't really paying
Getting
attention to
anything
his
new?
organics.
Yeah,
And when he finally started paying attention to his organics, oh shit, fired the guy. So he wasn't destitute, but I saw the opportunity to do some stuff more as a partnership, and it worked out great. But like I said, it didn't end well, but I learned a lot, and that's when I started figuring out that because I also do that with consulting is, I'll teach you and show you what to do. You have to do it, obviously. And you don't have to pay me, but shoot me, 5%, just whatever.
there's a
Um,
formula for success
um,
for sure. And
Exactly. But I think you also have to be at a point, obviously when I was first starting out in SEO, I was taking that $400 guy, I just needed to start. I needed to start bringing in some money, and
yeah, yeah.
I
I
still
think we
have
all do.
three of my original clients from 12 years ago. And I still have one guy that pays me 400 a month. He laughs every time he freaking pays me. And we go out to sushi every quarter. And, luckily he's in the insurance game. So it's a little bit different since it switched on him. But you do have these type of situations when you're first starting out that you really take on a lot of clients that you probably shouldn't have taken on. We've all
That's
done that,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
why when you're like, I'm a big believer in firing or letting go or whatever, really vetting, because
Hmm.
that's huge. Because you get to a point where your time, you only have so much. I'm just a little guy. I'm not out to, I don't want to build some huge, massive agency.
And
You know,
most people don't. That's the whole thing. Most people are happy with,
little
15, 20
small
grand a month.
boutique, take on a few really good clients, and I'm pretty happy. And then I got a few other, income sources. Like you said, I got a couple where I get percentages and
Hmm.
things, and I understand the whole conversation about somebody else can come in and be like, they just see it as you're taking that percentage. You aren't doing anything. You're just collecting because they're so busy and it just is coming in on its own. And what do you do? You're just giving this guy money for nothing.
Hmm.
And hopefully you've built that relationship up and they can remember that it wasn't always busy because it's like, no, we were in dire straits. Like you said, those are great scenarios because they'll remember that we were in dire
Yeah.
straits. He saved us, and they're going to be pretty loyal as long as somebody else doesn't come in later. like you said.
And that's the, one of the big things that I kind of miss in this industry is that appreciation factor. I mean,
Yeah,
I've made companies millions. I had
they, it's a
one of my med
disappointing.
spas sold for like $18 million. I didn't get any part of that, which is, it's fine. But, it was, but then there's that, hey, we got to let you go. And like, we've been together 3 years. You're getting like 300 leads a month. I mean, so then you have that non-appreciation factor because they want to go a different direction or whatever. And I punish them when they come back.
Oh yeah, I think most of us
I'm
do.
known for that.
I
Yeah.
think most of us do because
So,
it's discouraging because we were loyal to you and we
hmm
did all this and we know the numbers. We know how much you're making and you're
Yep.
complaining about I've had people complain about under $1,000 in the past. Now it's like you're literally are you kidding me? Are you
Yep.
kidding me right now? And it is a bad taste in your mouth. And then you got the extreme people that will go through and sabotage and I'm like that's wild to me too, but I understand why you're bitter. But at the same time, no, you just let them go on their way. They'll be back, and when they come back, we're going to renegotiate because the we now I understand that this is a business prop. You don't have any loyalty to me, so
Yep.
that means I have to look out for myself more, or at least equal to you. As to where prior I may have been looking out more for you than myself, like
hmm
described how I go overboard, and that's why I won't take on a dying business because I kind of am like obsessing that, oh man, this is somebody's livelihood. This is their, and I get too involved in that situation. So I try to avoid them.
Yeah. And for sure. And that's you got to really, if you go down that road, because I have saved a bunch of businesses, obviously, because but again, the number one thing is you have to listen. You have to, you're hiring me for a reason. I'm very good at what I do and I can help you. But if you're going to fight me, then you're just going to go on your merry way and good luck, and I'm very rigid. I don't deal with IT departments. If you're a company that I got to get permission to do stuff to the website, I'm not a good fit, you know. And I've had C-suite companies offer me thousands of dollars a month, and I've took some of those on, and I had to have the website requests in by the 22nd so the board can approve them by the on the 20. I ain't doing that crap, and I'll build you little microsites. I won't even deal with your IT department. I'll build microsites that I control, that I can control the lead flow and everything with, because especially in my schema, no freaking IT department ever approved my schema. It's hundreds of thousands of lines of code.
And they
They're not
don't
going to put,
understand it. They
they
don't
don't understand it.
understand
They're
it,
not
and
going to
so
put that
they
in
don't know if they don't understand it. That's an automatical no. That's just the
Mhm.
way that that
For
system
sure.
works. SEO takes too long anyway. Hey, so every approval that you do, every week, every 2 weeks,
hmm
every little process, it adds up, and before you know it, you're 3 6 months in, and you just got approved for the first 2 months of work, and it's
Yep. Exactly.
it is frustrating. I agree there. Um,
For sure.
so I do think anybody who's looking into hiring someone, you should ask for referrals. You should ask for
Yeah.
active and past clients, even
hmm
because that'll give you even a past client. At least maybe it didn't work out, but it may have not been their fault. They may have done a wonderful job, but you can understand how they exited because I think that says a lot more about an agency than than realistically a lot of other factors because you'll hear from their side. Did they help or did they just kind of be like, "Oh, you're leaving? Well, F you, and we're going to take everything hostage." And because that happens all the time.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely.
crazy. Like I said, Wild West, they hold the phone number, they hold the website hostage. Put, I've seen them put code in place to make it so it didn't index. They put code in place so they still have access and control. They've
Yeah.
modified content. They disabled all meta and titles, and they basically just went through and undid everything that you paid them to do, and did worse damage because they got
hmm
bitter or hurt because you decided you didn't want to keep paying them and they weren't doing a good job.
Yeah, definitely. And there's, and my cardinal rule is I don't undo anything that you
Yeah.
pay. And unfortunately, there's a whole wrath of people out there that do, especially if you use softwares, that take away things once you stop things, and these stupid things out there that do this stuff. And I was involved with a lawsuit about 4 years ago. I didn't even know it was a lawsuit. Back when I was taking care of lawyers, I got a lead for a law firm and I did a nice audit. He paid me like $1,500 to do an extensive audit. And I sent him the stuff and sent him a Zoom link, and next thing you know, I'm getting a subpoena to show up in court. And I'm like, "What is this?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I want you as a witness." I'm like, "Sorry, I'm no way. I don't get into that crap, And he's like, "Well, I just need to know what somebody did to this website." And I kind of followed it a little bit because he had all the reports and what had happened was he freaking when the SEO company left, they had some script file that was creating pages
Yep.
and they stopped the script file and all of a sudden their sitemap went from 2,000 pages down to 200 and Google said, F you.
Yep.
And the bad thing is the script file was still in all the sidebars. So it was throwing up, thousands of 404s every single day. I mean, it was a mess. And the guy, whoever did it, probably should have been punished for it, but I just wasn't going to be involved. But it was bad. It was something that, first of all, why are you doing that to a lawyer? And second of all, why didn't you know your system would do this once you remove that script file? And I don't know. It's just hopefully that kind of stuff is that there's still Search Atlas and see some of these other softwares out there that still do that kind of stuff that play those little stupid games. But
Yeah, and I
um,
and I played with it for I played with Search Atlas for a while, and
yeah,
at first it seemed really promising, and then and then they also introduced where you could freeze it or lock it in. So that way I
yeah,
was like, oh, that's cool. But the problem with locking it in is you can't modify it. And anyone who comes in after you, they don't know what they're looking at. And they're like, why is my titles not sticking? Why is this not changing? And then they find that code and they're like, then they remove the code well,
yeah,
now you removed everything and they still have to start over. So as good as
yeah.
it
And I,
sounds
I
on paper, it's not a good idea.
yeah, it's a nightmare. I took on a big med spa in Florida that had that whole system attached to it, and and I told him, I'm like, I'm deleting this code. I'm telling you that right now, it's gone. And he goes, "What's that going to do?" And I said, "We'll see." I was honest with him. I was like, I really haven't dealt with this in about a year. I was a huge search atlas. He even sponsored my events and did a whole bunch of stuff. But when they came out with auto, they really went down a direction I didn't agree with. And so I just stopped using it and went on my merry way. And then now I'm starting to see sites that have this stuff and and I'm just honest with business owners. I'm look, we need full control of this website, and we can't have full control until we get rid of this. And
Yeah.
once we get rid of this, it could happen,
Now we
could
have
do
to
this.
reevaluate. We have to go through every page by page and
Yeah.
things, do these audits. And yeah, no, it's an interesting system, and I don't think it's terrible for like a small business owner trying to do it on
Oh
their
yeah,
own.
no, I mean it's definitely
But
got its place. I don't think it's good for
just
marketing.
not for agencies.
Yeah.
It's a bad model. It's almost like controlling that call tracking number and holding things hostage,
Oh, totally.
because you can't modify it. That's the main problem. And if
Yeah.
you could, then it's not a big deal. Like it's just like Yoast or anything else. It's an assistant. It helps you.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's kind of an interesting system for sure.
Definitely. So,
But yeah, I've
and
seen some.
yeah, I mean, we've all seen. I'm looking at a website. Actually, I'm probably not going to look at it anymore. This thing's a freaking mess. These older websites. If you have an old website and you have website rebuilt on top of website on top of website on top of website without doing a clean install with a new site, try to hire somebody like me who's a technical guy and I just look at that stuff and see that stuff and I'm like, you still have HTML pages here. So, and it was funny too because Soltera site, my main site is just like that. It's literally freaking. I think we're on our. I'm now building a whole new one on a temp server, but I think we're on our sixth layer of Soltera site. But that was my number one testing site. That's why I have so many lead gens because I can't count on Soltera site because that's what I use. It's a very powerful domain, very powerful site, and I can get testing results very quickly from it. And so,
Yeah,
uh,
I
yeah,
have a
yeah,
law
it's
firm that I'm dealing with that. We're like 10 layers in and about eight name changes. And it's like I'm still
mm,
finding stuff from the original law firm. And I'm going, you still have this on here and you have this number that clearly goes to an old partner's firm now. And it's
yeah,
you're like, what is this? Why is this even here still? This should have been
yeah.
cleaned up 4 agencies ago.
Well, I started doing internet audits. This is then it was because of just like that. And and in the questionnaire, the very first one that I got was a partnership split. They'd split a couple years ago, but I don't know why they did this. Obviously, they didn't know. Well, one person took the .com, one person took the .net. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of stupid for both of you because you're just going to be bumping heads the whole freaking way. But so I did an internet audit for him, and I said, okay, this is what Bob's got, this is what Pete's got, this is everything in Bob. I mean, literally, it was pretty fun audit because it was literally freaking searching and scraping, and I've got all kinds of different tools that I can do shit with, and and when I turned it over to him, I was like, well, and I did a percentage. I was like, okay, well, Bob's like 62%, and you're like freaking 44%, and you're the original guy with the .com, and Bob's kicking your butt with his .net. And my final thing, well, at the end, you're both going to compete and butt heads. I would recommend one or the other, get a different domain, keep the same business name, logo, brand, whatever. But yeah, you're going to compete. But it was interesting because it was a different, like I do a lot of on-page audits and link audits and all this stuff, but I'd never really done an internet audit. Where's everybody at? Who's all these different people? And so it's pretty cool. But now I have that as an offering. And I've actually done two of them just in the past month of, hey, let's see where you're at on the internet. You know, we'll worry about your website later. Let's go out and see where you're at, especially older companies,
Oh yeah.
30, 40, 50 years old. Like you said, there's shit out there about them that was,
Might
they
have been a
don't even
business
want out there
idea that they
anymore.
didn't even run with.
Yeah, they don't even want that crap anymore,
Uh,
so, but it was pretty cool. Yeah, I never thought about doing internet audits before, and it worked out pretty well. So, but, interesting.
yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on and taking your time to talk with me and help
Definitely.
educate some people, tell everybody about things. This is generally the part where I allow you to promote whatever you'd like, and then we'll conclude, and then I'll send you over the files and stuff I discussed in Messenger.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'll invite you over to our podcast too. We do that on Mondays. I think the only thing that I'm really excited about the relaunch of the university. The university I started doing years ago, I think 7 or 8 years ago, and I built it originally for a place to put my SOPs so I could have my employees go through and I could track what they went through and everything instead of just giving them a Google Drive and hey, go through this. Anyways, and it kind of morphed into me doing on-page classes. I think I did 10 on-page classes where I taught on-page and Schema Live. And then I just started, you know, really looking at the university as far as my SOPs. I had a whole bunch of SOPs that we've never done that I want to do, especially around, YouTube optimization and all the different things that we now should be paying more attention to. And I just put my SOPs for my high level builds and funnel hacking and all this stuff. So university now is literally a marketing university. Of course, it's got the optimization piece, but it's got high level, it's got CRO. There's 27 lessons just for CRO. People don't realize that you need to be tracking your phone calls, your forms, all those are CRO plays. And, when I get clients that come to me that have over 1,000 hits a month, we're talking CRO.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not talking, that's the first thing out of the gate. So, but all the university has this. So there's three different payment systems. There's the first level, which is everything in the university. Right now it's 37 classes, and I think it's going to be closer to 40 by December. So this thing's going to continue to build. The middle area gets the whole university, plus you get Soltera's content tool and image tool. So we've been generating our own content and images. The content that we do has my schema involved in it also. So it'll produce everything all at once. And then the upper level gets those two, plus it gets my schema generator and my audit generator, my audit tool. So I really put a lot of time, effort, and energy into this thing to have people go to a spot that they could actually learn true, real stuff. There's a private Facebook group with me. You have access to me and questions. But it's really a place that, you can not be frustrated anymore. And
Oh,
I get a lot of people that'll pay me for, an hour of time. And I'm like, I appreciate that. But
should have just signed up for the university.
yeah,
So,
I
so
mean,
what is the
it's
university called?
SolteraUniversity.com.
Okay, and who is it for? Is it for a beginner? Because I mean, when you're describing this for someone who understands, like me, or someone who's been in the game,
Mm-hmm.
we're understanding the terminology you're using, but some new people may not.
I
So
put
what?
it in the chat.
So
Um, it's for everybody. Like I said, I originally built the university for the local plumber, the local roofer, the local person that wants their daughter to help with all the. I mean, it's just the whole local thing because I used to get a lot of people, not so much anymore, but I get a lot of people that don't have $2,000 a month or
right.
$2,500 a month, but they have three or 400 that they can start learning.
Yes. Yes.
And, and so that's the whole original reason I built the university. And then it just morphed into people sending me their employees and it morphed into good for agencies. And so this course starts from the very, very basics. Let's get your tracking down first before we do
Okay.
anything else.
So
Let's
that,
set
that
up.
way you can see what works.
Exactly. And so it starts, that's the very first course, and it's actually the only mandatory course in the entire university. I don't care if you've done it before, but 90% of people, especially agency owners, aren't setting up their tracking. They're just putting in the analytics code and the search console code, and that's it. But you need to
Been
set up your
guilty.
goals, your UTM, all the different things you need to do. And so,
Okay.
so it is basically for beginnings, and it does get into advanced. I mean, the level 3 search course gets into reading server logs and understanding how long Google spends on your website, and
Crawl budget.
and how often is ChatGPT coming, and what is ChatGPT crawling compared to what you don't want them to crawl.
What to check
Um,
for to make sure you're not blocking AI, making sure.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is, like I said, it is literally a marketing university, and you can click around if you're just interested in ecom, or you just want to get into the high levels. I've got massive stuff with high levels as far as building funnels, as far as all the stuff that we do. We send out hundreds of emails every single morning through our funnel systems, and we probably get 30% of our organic leads that way. It's a big thing that agency owners, and it's typically kind of free. I mean, once you set it up and you start setting up I want to send 300 a day or whatever, buy a list, set it, I had to get the list seasoned. I have all that in the university. So, so it's not just an SEO, because I also an SEOuniversity.net. That was the original classes were, but this is a whole system that I built the whole university.
Help businesses succeed, basically. And I've told a lot of business owners too to go out and learn a little bit about SEO. That's always my
Mhm.
advice, because you should at least know the basics
Yep.
to know that, hey, are things going the way they should? Is this working? Are we going the right direction? Are they actually changing or doing anything? Is anything happening? Because
Mhm.
that's what I get a lot of complaints about. We hired so and so, they did great at first, and then now I don't hear from them, and I assume it's working, but
Mhm.
revenue's not really going where I want. But everyone's telling me that's because of AI. And
Well, and that's the big thing that's happening right now, and that's a factual statement. Yeah,
yeah,
you are losing organic clicks, and you're losing them to AI.
yeah,
That's happening. It's
right.
going to continue to happen. But you need to make sure. And I tell business owners, I was like, "What do you do at 6 o'clock after dinner?" I said, you need to be getting on your phone and searching. I tell people, don't ever Google yourself, but look at AI, what they're bringing up. That's where you need to say, put in your brand name in ChatGPT. See what ChatGPT knows about your brand. That's the first place to start, and then just you start working from there. And, business owners will find out. I got a guy we got, about last month, the month before, 50-year-old business, his website's like 30 freaking years old, super freaking powerful website, but he's nowhere in AI,
Yeah.
nowhere, you know, and, and he goes, well, I don't understand it. And I said, well, I can kind of show you some technical reasons why, but, but here's what we need to do going forward. And so it gets kind of interesting when you try to encourage people to, just see what Perplexity says about you. But don't even know me. Well, we got some work then to do. So let's
And
do a press release. First thing, get your brand out there. We're not going to mention keywords, nothing for the first 2 months. We're just going to go out and do brand building. We're going to
yep.
build your brand, build your brand, build your brand. And so all that stuff's in the university. I have stuff out in there about how to sell your services,
Do you recommend tools? Do you recommend like from the
tools.
ground up so they know that they're not just wasting their money buying something that doesn't
Exactly.
work? Or
Yep.
it sounds
Exactly
great.
right. So, but yeah, it's a passion. I mean, I've been working on this solid for about 8 months. Right now I've got a founders release. I'm allowing 30 people to come in as founders for 30% off forever. And the founders are going to help me actually get this thing even bigger and better. So,
That's awesome.
um, it is a lot of fun. I have a passion for teaching. I have a passion for helping people. I just wanted to have a centralized little place to go. Hey, forget, Signal Lab. This is where you need to go to learn SEO.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Well, it feels like that's where it's going anyway. It seems like Facebook groups are kind of since AI came out, it just seems like they get flooded with. Unfortunately, it's harder to connect with people. It's harder, and then you got the disagreements and all that on top of the AI, and
well,
it
and you
just
still have what last thing I read, like 20% is still fake bots that are answering they're arguing with you. So
yeah.
you have fake shit arguing with you.
Yeah, no, Facebook alone, a lot of the users you'll start to see the pattern. You'll be like, this isn't even a person. Like,
Exactly.
dang, they're getting good because I even a few times have been like thinking this is a real person, and then they message me in Messenger, and I'm talking, and I'm like, this isn't a person. Like, what?
Yeah.
That was good. They did good.
Yeah, and it's I mean it gets crazy in some of these freaking things. And I get all kinds of friends requests, obviously, and I'll go look and I was like, okay, you got a 5-year-old Facebook account and 3 posts. Okay, that's kind
Yeah,
of weird.
and some people are real private. I get that, but if that's the case, why are they sending some random person a friend request? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
but I do appreciate you coming on.
Oh,
Anybody
definitely.
looking to
Thank you for
learn,
having me.
let's go over to the university, check it out. I know I'm going to go take a look and just see what it's about. So that way, if anybody asks me about where they should go to learn more, obviously I want to know what it's more about and what it entails and things like that. Um, and then we'll be in touch. Like I said in the messages,
Perfect.
I'll send you over the files and everything. And you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you for having me. I look forward to it.
Take care.